His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Dillon, Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Laurent Musango, UN Resident Coordinator for Mauritius and Seychelles, Ms. Isatou Gaye, Head of Delegation and Chief, Sub-Regional Initiative Section, ECA Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, and Ms. Alexia Schmiliver, First Secretary of the European Union Delegation to the Republic of Mauritius and Seychelles, and the head of the Regional Trade Section. Good morning and welcome to this workshop entitled the Mauritius National Response Strategy Validation Workshop. My name is Dhananjay Lakshman, Deputy Director of the International Trade Division. So, ladies and gentlemen, the objective of this workshop is mainly to take stock of the findings and recommendations of the study on the Mauritius National Response Strategy done by the UNECA and also by the International Economics. We've been very active regarding the AfCFTA negotiation since 2015, very active and also very aggressive in the negotiation for both trade in goods and services. Mauritius, we have signed the AfCFTA in 2018, and we have ratified the agreement in 2019, and we were among the first 5 countries to table our tariff offers for the 90% liberalization and also for the offer for trading services to the African Union. And now the CFTA is in force as from 1st January 2021, and we can trade. We can trade on the agreed rules of origin, we can trade preferentially on the agreed rules of origin, and also on the 90% tariff lines that member states, the state parties, they have tabled to the African Union. The CFTA, it sends a strong signal to investors that Africa is open for business based on a single rule book for trade and investment. We have completed, more or less finalized the negotiation on the phase 1, especially the rules of origin. More than 80% of the rules of origin have been agreed by member states. And also in terms of market access, the 90%, we have around 40 offers from member states regarding the offers for tariff liberalization. And with regard to trading services, we have around 42 offers on the table, and we are expected, as per the decision of the Council of Ministers, to finalize the negotiations on trading services by the end of this year. So we have one continent. Of course, we have other regs. For example, the SADC, we have the COMESA, the ECOWAS, the CEMAC. But here, for the CFTA, we have one continent, one trade area. The AfCFTA is a major step towards creating the Africa we want. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased now to welcome the opening statement from Ms. Isatou Gaye, Head of Delegation and Chief Sub-Regional Initiative Section, ECA Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa. Ms. Isatou Gaye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lakshman. Your Excellency, Ambassador Mr. H. Dillon, Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, Mr. D. Lakshman, Deputy Director, Trade Policy, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, senior government officials of the Republic of Mauritius, Ms. Alexia Skiliver, First Secretary of the European Union Delegation to the Republic of Mauritius and the Republic of Seychelles, Dr. Laurent Musango, UN Resident Coordinator ad interim, for Mauritius and Seychelles, colleagues from the United Nations system in Mauritius, distinguished representatives of the private sector, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the United Nations Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, Dr. Vera Songwe, and on my own behalf, I have the honor to welcome you all to this validation workshop on the Mauritius African Continental Free Trade Area Response Strategy, organized by the government of Mauritius with technical and financial support from ECA and the European Union, respectively. Having said that, I bring you warm greetings from the Director of the ECA Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, Ms. Eunice Kamwender, who unfortunately could not be here with us, but she sends her best wishes for the success of this meeting. I wish to commend the government of Mauritius for the excellent leadership and strong ownership it has demonstrated in the formulation of the National AfCFTA Response Strategy. I congratulate the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade for successfully mobilizing all relevant national stakeholders to attend this important workshop. The strategy indeed lays the foundation for the successful implementation of the AfCFTA agreement in Mauritius and marks the beginning of a new chapter in the country's economic development trajectory. Ladies and gentlemen, today's workshop serves three main objectives. First, to provide a platform to present the national AfCFTA's response strategy of the country. Second, to further engage with stakeholders in fine-tuning the action plan of the response strategy. And third, to strengthen awareness of the AfCFTA and its expected benefits to Mauritius. As you may recall, the first draft of the strategy was presented and discussed at a stakeholders workshop in December 2020. The version you'll be deliberating on today has been updated to integrate the valuable comments and inputs received from that workshop. The presence of stakeholders from the private sector and industry in the workshop is significant, as they are the ultimate drivers behind the implementation of trade agreements in Mauritius, including the AfCFTA agreement. The sustained engagement of the private sector and local industry in the implementation of the agreement is vital to the attainment of its objective. The agreement, as you will know, is set to create a single African market of 55 African Union member states, comprising about 1.3 billion consumers and more than 3.4 trillion in combined GDP. It will boost intra-African trade by 52.3% through the elimination of import duties and non-tariff barriers. The World Bank estimates that by 2030, real income would increase by 7% across the continent if the AfCFTA is fully implemented with tariff liberalization, non-tariff barrier removal, as well as trade facilitation, which would translate into $445 billion in monetary terms. This presents significant potential to transform the economic landscape of the entire continent and to help countries achieve higher levels of industrialization, employment creation, and sustained economic growth and development. However, these gains will not be automatic and will rest crucially on the development and implementation of national AfCFTA strategies. I would now like to turn my attention to three issues. the state of play of AfCFTA agreement, its potential benefits to Mauritius, and ECA's support to the AfCFTA process. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, the AfCFTA is a flagship project of the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, and a key step towards achieving the vision of the Abuja Treaty of 1991 towards establishing the African Economic Community. Subsequent to the signing of the agreement establishing the AfCFTA in 2018, it entered into force on 30 May 2019, following ratification by 24 AU member states. To date, 42 state parties have deposited their instruments of ratification, Mauritius being the 28th country to ratify. In addition to Mauritius, 11 other SADC member states have so far ratified the agreement. They are namely Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Namibia, Seychelles, South Africa, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Trading under the AfCFTA agreement commenced on 1 January 2021, while negotiations on outstanding issues continue in earnest. In this regard, the 8th meeting of the AfCFTA Council of Ministers responsible for trade convened in Accra, Ghana on 28 and 29 January this year, with an overall objective of assessing the status of negotiations on outstanding issues and agreeing on the steps towards the start of commercially meaningful trading under the AfCFTA. The Council of Ministers noted the progress made towards the conclusion of negotiations on rules of origin and agreed that trading under the AfCFTA regime proceeds on the basis of agreed rules of origin covering 87.7% of total tariff lines. The Council also noted the progress made on trade facilitation and the approach to corridor interventions towards the implementation of the AfCFTA, progress towards harmonization of trading documents under the AfCFTA, progress made in operationalizing AfCFTA institutions, including the dispute settlement body and the establishment of the appellate body, as well as the ongoing efforts to collaborate with the private sector, as well as the conclusion of the AfCFTA private sector engagement plan, among other milestones. Trade in services negotiations are at an advanced stage, with 46 member states submitting their schedules of specific commitments. The 7th meeting of the Committee on Trade in Services met in Accra, Ghana, only last week to accelerate the process towards the conclusion of negotiations on trade in services, and the Council of Ministers directed this should be done by 30 June 2022. In addition, work is advancing in the committees on Phase 2 negotiations, namely investment, competition policy, intellectual property rights, digital trade, women and youth in trade, and negotiations on the related protocols are expected to be concluded by September 2022. What are the potential benefits for Mauritius in the AfCFTA agreement? Through its membership to both COMESA and SADC, Mauritius is implementing regional economic integration programs and has signaled its commitment to become a notable player on the African regional trade and integration scene. However, the country is still dependent on non-African markets for its exports and imports, with trade mainly concentrated in South Africa within the continent. It is worth noting that the country has a significant scope in the AfCFTA framework to overcome limitations of a small market size and associated diseconomies of scale through deepening its trade and investment ties with the African continent to both source inputs and market its products to new customers. Therefore, effective implementation of its national AfCFTA response strategy could be an additional lever to support Mauritius sustain the status of a high-income country and achieve its Vision 2030. I am pleased to inform you that ECA has established an online African Regional Integration Index platform that allows comparisons across countries and regional economic communities on the state of regional integration. The index assesses a country state of regional integration along 5 dimensions, namely trade integration, productive integration, macroeconomic integration, infrastructural integration, and free movement of people. Mauritius is a high performer on this index, scoring an overall of 0.42 and ranking 5th in Africa. However, this performance is due to a high ranking on macroeconomic and infrastructural integration. Mauritius remains a low performer on trade and productive integration. By leveraging the AfCFTA, the country can make inroads into untapped African markets in goods and services and increase gains from trade and investment. For example, through the AfCFTA, Mauritius can leverage its expertise in the tourism and financial sectors to support tourism and financial services development on the continent through cross-border supplies, commercial presence, and movement of persons. The Mauritian manufacturing sector can also benefit from integration into regional value chains on the continent, exporting not only final goods, but also intermediates along the industrial regional value chain. However, ECA's modeling calculations estimate that most of the trade gains from the implementation of the AfCFTA agreement in Mauritius will accrue from trade in services. On ECA's support to the AfCFTA process, ECA remains available to provide technical and advisory support to member states in rolling out and implementing their national AfCFTA strategies. Support can be provided, for instance, in implementing the necessary reforms for the smooth implementation of the agreement, as well as building on the capacities needed to reap the expected benefits from the AfCFTA, including productive, entrepreneurial, and industrial capacities. The benefits of the AfCFTA cannot be reaped unless countries of the region continue to strengthen their industrial competitiveness to be able to compete with non-African imports. ECA will be happy to collaborate further with the government of Mauritius on enhancing the country's trade and industrial competitiveness, and will continue its engagement with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade of Mauritius to green its national AfCFTA response strategy. This will be through, among others, the identification of green value chain opportunities to foster green export opportunities within the framework of the strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to emphasize that the AfCFTA is a potential game changer for Africa's economic integration. In developing its AfCFTA response strategy, Mauritius has demonstrated its readiness to effectively implement the agreement in order to reap its attendant benefits. The country stands to gain significantly by leveraging the large market offered by the agreement in terms of size and combined GDP. In this regard, the private sector and industry should position themselves to drive implementation. ECA stands ready to collaborate with the UN system and development partners in the country to support the government of Mauritius in the implementation of the recommendations of the action plan of its response strategy. In this regard, I would like to extend profound thanks to the European Union for its invaluable financial support that has been instrumental to the support ECA has been providing to member states in the AfCFTA process. We look forward to your continued support as countries embark on the implementation process. My thanks also go to the UN Resident Coordinator, AI, and the UN family in Mauritius for their partnership. I would like to extend my utmost gratitude to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration, and International Trade for our fruitful collaboration in the development of the AfCFTA response strategy. I wish you fruitful deliberations, and thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaillet, for your statement. You indicated that the CFTA is going to be the single market for Africa. The main objective is to promote the level of intra-trade, which is very low, at the level of REX, for example, COMESA, SADC, the intra-trade is very low, around 18 to 20%. And also that single market is going to promote competitiveness among the member states of the African Union. And that would, of course, promote industrialization of the continent. But the most important thing you mentioned is how countries, especially Mauritius, how we could hook to that regional value chain, which is very, very important for small countries, especially like Mauritius. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Dr. Laurent Moussango, UN Resident Coordinator for Mauritius and Seychelles. He's going to deliver his speech for this workshop. Thank you.
His Excellency Ambassador Dilam, Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, Madame Aissatou Gueye, Chief United Economic Commission for Africa, Sub-Regional Office of Southern Africa, Madame Alexia Smith-Liver, First Secretary of the European Union Delegation of the Republic of Mauritius and the Republic of Seychelles, Head of the Regional Trade Section, our Master of the Ceremony, Nick Simon, Deputy Director Trade Policy, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integrated International Trade, distinguished guests, member of the press, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. It's my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the UN Resident Coordinator, Christine Umutoni, who is not present today, to today's workshop for the validation of the National Mauritius African Continent Free Trade Area Response Strategy. This is an important and timely event convened by the Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and National Trade of Mauritius and the UNECA. So I wish, and let me start by congratulate both you, the Ministry, and UNECA for this excellent initiative at this time when Mauritius is aiming to consolidate its position as a high-income country in difficult and challenging conditions on the global scene. At the six small island development states depend on import and of commodities. Mauritius remain highly vulnerable to hardship imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, like other countries, and will unfortunately have a big cost of current global turmoil. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, promoting trade and investment with Africa continent, which to date has played a small role in Mauritian economy, is becoming more and more important than ever. As my colleague said, Africa is still empty, and it's really a good opportunity to invest and to collaborate with African continent. So the African continent has become an increasingly important economic region for Mauritius. Nevertheless, to date, the country's main trading partners lie outside of Africa. In the context of the underexploited potential of Africa and transcontinental trade, the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area presents a major opportunity of the country. The Mauritius National AfCFTA strategy that will be presented today can help leverage the opportunity that the historic negotiation of the AfCFTA present to the country. Ladies and gentlemen, talking to what also UN is supporting in that area, you know that the UN entity joint work in guided by the government of Mauritius and UN Strategic Framework Partnership 2019-2023. With regard to seizing this opportunity arising through the AfCFTA, I would like to highlight the two strategic objectives of the SPF, for which trade, investment, and economic integration are vital. The first one is sustainable job creation and economic growth. The AfCFTA offers significant potential to transform the economic landscape of the entire continent and is set to help countries achieve higher level of industrialization, employment creation, sustained economic growth, and development. The second one is inclusive prosperity with an emphasis on reducing the vulnerabilities of Mauritians to risks from poverty, climate, food insecurity, inequality, and discrimination. The UN has described to tackling those issues globally, notably under the SDG framework. Ladies and gentlemen, this is included in the Mauritius Vision 2030, already elevate trade as one of the key pillars supporting the country economic transformation. The importance of international trade has also been recognized by the government through the National Export Strategy 2017, whose vision embeds the ambition that trade could and should support a more competitive economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have opportunity, and we should seize those opportunities. Let me talk about only two. The first one is local manufacturing has strong potential in the new free trade regime brought about the African continent free trade area. And the second opportunity, which also my colleague Aishatu mentioned, is the government of Mauritius, with the support of development partners, has made significant steps toward a greener economy with the new government agenda aiming to further drive the transition. Ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, allow me to stress that at the UN Resident Coordinator Office of Mauritius, our role is to help and coordinate work of the numerous UN agencies that provide support to Mauritius and also to facilitate support from the UN system to the government of Mauritius. So there are 19 agencies with presence in Mauritius, which include non-resident agencies such as UNECA and United National Commission from Trade and Development, covering a broad range of thematic area of work ranging from inclusive trade and investment, local economic development, environmental sustainability, industrialization, and food security. As the AfCFTA has been developed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the technical support of UNECA and also founded by European Union, the Resident Coordinator Office will continue his role of supporting the work for his implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and other requests that will come from the government. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, At this stage, it is important for Mauritius to seize this opportunity arising from enhancing trade, investment, and economic integration with the African continent. And we at the UN stand ready to provide support on how best to integrate new technology, digitalization, and greening in the Mauritian economy. At the same time, we remain in our commitment to leave no one behind during this process. I wish you a fruitful deliberation, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laurent Musango, for your statement. You indicated that due to the COVID pandemic, the regional supply chains has been disrupted, and the CFTA it could be a major opportunity for Mauritius to produce some of the products that are required in the region, and also in terms of how we could benefit from the CFTA is in terms of the digital economy, and also in terms of the food security that we could promote not only in Mauritius but with the region. So that issue of food security is connected to the regional value chain, and this is very, very important for Mauritius to promote and also benefit from the CFTA. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Alexia Sishlever, First Secretary of the European Union Delegation to the Republic of Mauritius and Seychelles, and Head of the Regional Trade Section. Ms. Alexia, she has an outstanding trade profile, and in the past, she was in charge of the implementation of the free trade agreement between EU and Mexico, and supported the deepening of the agreement with the Directorate of the General for Trade to the EU delegation. So, Ms. Alexia, please welcome to this workshop. You are invited to deliver your speech. Thank you.
His Excellency, Ambassador Hemaindoyal Dilum, Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, Mrs. Isatu Gay, Head of Delegation, Chief, UNECA Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, Dr. Laurent Musango, UN Resident Coordinator for Mauritius and the Seychelles, Mr. Luximan, Deputy Director, Trade Policy, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, distinguished guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real honor and pleasure to be here today, a bit more than 1 year after the event that launched this important reflection for Mauritius' national response strategy on the African continental free trade area implementation. First of all, I would like to thank the Mauritian authorities for their vote at the United Nations and for saluting the courage of the Ukrainian women and men who are ready to risk their lives to defend our common values. The EU is thrilled about the continuous momentum in getting the African continental free trade area off the ground, as it is considered to be a real and effective game changer that will further help Africa's economic transformation. The EU, as the other unique continental integration success story, is here. And it is here as a long-term partner to share experiences on economic and regional integration and single market. The EU has been a partner for Africa since the beginning of the process, supporting it politically and financially, and through its trade policy. Trade is one of the strategic and traditional areas of mutual interest for the EU-African Union cooperation and a key pillar of the new EU-Africa partnership. The European Commission released its new EU strategy for Africa in March 2020 towards a comprehensive strategy with Africa. This comprehensive strategy outlines 5 partnerships. 1, on green transition and energy access. 2nd, on digital transformation. 3rd, on sustainable growth and jobs. 4th, on peace and governance. And 5th, on migration and mobility. The Africa-Europe Alliance for Sustainable Investment and Jobs and the Agenda 2063 provide a common policy framework and call for strengthened economic integration and structural transformation to boost job creation in Africa, notably through green investments and sustainable trade. This priority area focuses on deploying the EU Global Gateway Package in Africa by strengthening economic integration at regional and continental levels with the aim to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth and decent job creation. It also aims at promoting transformative and competitive economies. Support under this priority area builds on the momentum for African integration with the start of trading under the African Continental Free Trade Area. As a first step, and with the implementation and deepening and widening of the economic partnership agreements to build progressively a continental common market. We are doing so in a Team Europe spirit, bringing together the European Union, member states, and the European Union itself as one force and common partner to the African Union and its member states. The European Commission is eager to strengthen its offer of sharing expertise in economic integration. We are also ready to develop jointly with the African Union Commission the integrated and coherent support at continental, regional, and national level. What is needed for effective implementation of the AfCFTA. The recently held 2022 European Union African Union Summit has further expanded our partnership and exchanges on Africa's economic integration. The EU-Africa Business Forum provides an unrivaled occasion for high-level dialogue and networking, bringing together African and European business leaders to discuss how to improve the business and investment climate. Among these are multinational companies, large corporations, small and medium-scale enterprises and confederations, as well as multilateral and regional institutions. By the way, Mauritius was represented by the Minister of Finance and Economic Development at the summit. The main theme that vertebrated this year was the need to build stronger value chains for sustainable growth and job creation, as well as to provide the necessary parameters to create these value chains. Other topics that were discussed were the need for sustainable investment, for a stable business environment that will be favorable to private sector investment, to reinforce the public-private dialogue and to enhance the long-term dialogue structures between African and European business through a permanent platform. There was also a call for a multi-stakeholder approach with an increased role of non-state actors, local authorities, women and youth to be integrated in EU-Africa relations to achieve a more inclusive and representative partnership. This will enable both continents to accelerate jointly human development, the green and digital transformation, as well as creating growth and jobs as common goals. The EU has been supporting the process from the early start of the African Continental Free Trade Area in 2015 and has allocated 74 million euros from 2014 to 2020 to support the African Continental Free Trade Area through its Pan-African program. Through this funding, the EU is supporting capacity building for the negotiation, the ratification, and the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area to ensure that African countries and intra-African trade can benefit from the opportunities that this agreement provides. The EU support has so far focused, first, on the African Continental Free Trade Area negotiation process and architecture, with 26 million euros that were mainly used for facilitating the negotiations, advocacy and ratification, and creating the African Union Trade Observatory. Second, it was focused on facilitating the future implementation with 40 million euros that were used for harmonizing goods classification, improving the system for intellectual property rights, the development of AfCFTA national implementation strategies, enhancing the effective application of rules of origin by customs administration, and enhancing the administration of Africa's plant and animal health systems. Third, we have extended support to the UNECA for the implementation of the project, deepening Africa's trade integration through effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And thanks to this funding, UNECA is able to undertake research, capacity building, and advocacy activities directly linked to the African Continental Free Trade Area. This project focuses on advocating for the African Continental Free Trade Area ratification by all African Union member states, supporting the African Union member states to develop and operationalize national strategies and plan for effective implementation and monitoring of the African Continental Free Trade Area, developing a tool to monitor and evaluate the African Continental Free Trade Area business environment in support of policy formulation. And this so while strengthening the capacity of national and regional stakeholders to implement the competitiveness and structural reforms needed for the AfCFTA to achieve its expected results. But the EU's financial support is also backed up by significant technical support. Today's event is part of this support through the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the AfCFTA negotiation and implementation. So far, over 33 member states like Mauritius are benefiting from EU support to develop their national implementation strategies. So African Union member states can be prepared when time for implementation comes and will be able to quickly reap the benefits the African Continental Free Trade Area has to offer. We, the EU, believe that once implemented, this AfCFTA can become the anchor for a continent-to-continent free trade area. And working towards this long-term perspective, the Commission wants to make maximum use of the EU's trade arrangements with Africa. The EU's trade arrangements are helpful also because the EU is the main market for most African exports, especially manufactured and processed products. The EU's agreements with African countries and regions also bring necessary high-quality inputs at lower price, which contributes to their competitiveness and value chains. The economic partnership agreements, in particular, enable African partners to use each other's goods in line with the established rules of origin for more competitive exports to the European Union. I am in particular thinking of the economic partnership agreement with Eastern and Southern Africa, the one that concerned here Mauritius, but also Comoros, Madagascar, Seychelles, and Zimbabwe, that we are currently busy deepening. Next week, we will conduct the 7th round of negotiations on this economic partnership agreement deepening. The discussions so far have been fruitful and brought us certainly closer. So EPAs, economic partnership agreements, my favorite topic, are interesting trade arrangements as they provide also for technical cooperation. For example, here in Mauritius, the EU has accompanied this process through support in various very important areas. For example, the national e-licensing system with 11 agencies and 17 of the most important permits already onboarded on the system. These are around 1,000 government officials using the national e-licensing platform on a daily basis, and private sector users have already reached nearly 100,000. This will be a game changer for investment. But there is still work to do, as there is a need to progressively onboard all the other many permits. I'm thinking also of the intellectual property law review, where implementing regulations have been published in January 2022. The organization structure of the Intellectual Property Council has already been submitted to government, and recruitment would start shortly. Finally, I'm also thinking of the regulatory impact assessment, which is being developed in collaboration with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. The technical experts are in Mauritius this week to enhance the capacity of Mauritian policy practitioners in fine-tuning this regulatory impact assessment framework. But there are also other trade arrangements, as the generalized scheme of preference, or the everything but arms that benefit many of our African partners, although Mauritius does not qualify for using those arrangements. The post-Cotonou negotiation reached conclusions at political level on 3 December 2020, and the chief negotiators initialed the negotiated text on 15 April 2021. The post-Cotonou agreement is expected to be signed in the second half of this year. We can only rejoice of this new agreement that embeds ACP-EU trade relations in the overall partnership, its general values and principles, and its drive for inclusive, sustainable economic growth and development. Within it, the Africa Protocol contains strong, positive provisions on the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Economic Partnership Agreements, as well as the relationship between them. So I would like to commend Mauritius for becoming one of the first countries in the region to ratify the African Continental Free Trade Area in September 2019. So far, 42 countries have ratified the African Continental Free Trade Area, and this shows the understanding of the government of Mauritius and of other governments of the relevance of being part of the world's largest free trade area, both in terms of membership and coverage. With 55 countries, it will potentially cover a market of 1.3 billion people with a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion US. It will also constitute a significant milestone towards the realization of the African Union Agenda 2063 for the socio-economic transformation of the continent. To talk about the benefits of its implementation, UNECA has assessed that the sole removal of tariffs on goods can increase the value of intra-African trade by 15 to 25% by 2040, depending obviously on the degree of liberalization efforts compared to a situation with no AfTA in place. These benefits are estimated to be significantly larger when trade in services are liberalized. Last year, the EU provided support to produce audits on services regulatory framework in a coordinated way with the GIZ and World Bank. So I would like to wish you all today very fruitful discussions at this very relevant workshop, where the findings and recommendations on the Mauritius National Response Strategy on the African Continental Free Trade Area implementation will be discussed. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Alexia Meliver, First Secretary of the European Delegation. We would like to thank you also for the technical assistance and capacity building programs that you've been given to Mauritius and also to the CFTA for both trading goods and trading services, and for us, for member states of the African Union, to implement this important, landmark achievement of the African Union. We have also heard from Ms. Alexia Meliver that the EU is also assisting Mauritius in terms of that regulatory impact assessment. This is very important for Mauritius in terms of assessing all the regulations that we planning to come into effect for Mauritius. So before we come with regulation, I think that is very important. At least we need to have assessment, a cost and benefit in terms of what would be the assessment on the operators, on our export, imports, and also on the production level, on the economy in general. So this project, regulatory impact assessment, is very important for us to increase our competitiveness and also to engage more in trade at regional and international level. So thank you for your statement. Ladies and gentlemen, please now welcome His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Dillon, Secretary for Foreign Affairs, to give his statement. The SFA, during his posting in Brussels, he has been instrumental in the trade negotiations for the post-Cotonou agreement and also the economic partnership agreement with the European Union and others. So he has a very good trade profile. He's been very active in the negotiation at the level of the EU, and he has participated in many international meetings and conferences on issues related to trade. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the SFA on the stage where he will deliver his opening statement for this event. Thank you.
Dr. Laurent Mosango, UN Resident Coordinator for Mauritius and Seychelles, Ms. Isatou Gay, Chief Sub-Regional Initiative Section UNECA, Ms. Alexia Ski-Meliver from European Union Delegation and Head of the Regional Trade Section, Mr. Lakshman, Deputy Director from the Ministry of International Trade, distinguished representatives from both government and private sector organizations, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of the Minister, who could not make it today because, you know, Friday is cabinet meeting, but he has requested me to convey his best wishes to all of you for a successful deliberations today. Anyway, he has also requested me to deliver his statement on his behalf. But before going to that statement, I think we have listened to all the previous participants, speakers, and it was so elaborated, so informative that I hardly have much to say during the speech today. Now, having said that, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this validation workshop on the Mauritius National African Continental Free Trade Area Response Strategy. Let me express our sincere appreciation to UNECA and the European Union for their assistance in organizing this workshop at such an opportune time. Today's discussion will not only focus on trade and investment opportunities existing under the African Free Trade Agreement, but it will also devise a strategy on how to unlock these opportunities. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa's developing economies, including small island developing states, have been badly hit since the emergence of the COVID-19 in 2020. Our already battered economies, which are particularly vulnerable to global threats, are now being faced with new COVID-19 variants and the rippling impacts of the current Ukraine war. At a time when African economies are only beginning to recover from the impact of COVID-19, the agreement brings an array of hope and endless opportunities. Mauritius strongly believes that the implementation of the agreement, which, let us remind ourselves, is a flagship project of the African Union Agenda 2063, which will lead to the positive transformation of many African economies. As such, we should harness the benefits of the agreement, which will encourage and boost intra-African production, intra-African consumption, and intra-African trade and investment. The World Bank estimates that by 2035, real income gains from full implementation of the agreement could increase by 7%, or nearly $450 billion. The potential impact at the household and corporate levels are also significant, with estimates showing that by 2030, the fully integrated market will have an estimated of $6.7 trillion of combined consumer and business spending. The geographical diversification brought about by the Continental Free Trade Area will open up new markets for Mauritius and boost our economy by way of increased exports. Under this agreement, Mauritius would have preferential access to a market of 1.3 billion consumers with a combined gross domestic product GDP of $3.4 trillion. Now is the time for Mauritius to adopt clear strategies, and this is what we will be doing today wholly, in order to take full advantage of this agreement. And this is exactly what the National Response Strategy, which aims at achieving today. The National Response Strategy would act as a roadmap and provide guidance to improving the country's development framework through economic diversification, development of regional value chains, expansion of our product portfolios, increased trade in our both goods and services in Africa, and attract more FDI. Presently, many foreign entrepreneurs and companies operate from Mauritius to avail of the trade advantages under the SADC and COMESA. The agreement will provide a further incentive for foreign operators to use Mauritius as a springboard to access the continent for trade and investment opportunities. However, for the agreement to bring meaningful and tangible result, it should be aligned with our broader Africa strategy. Already, we are implementing some innovative methods to boost exports on the continent. The government, in collaboration with the private sector, has, for example, set up a warehouse in Tanzania, of course with the support of the private sector, to support our export-oriented enterprises to export on the African market. Several other incentives are also in place to boost the confidence of our operators, such as the Mauritius Africa Fund, the setting up of an export development program, and the extension of the freight rebate scheme, which aims at promoting investment in Africa. While these measures are already contributing to increase exports, they are not enough. We should come up with more aggressive and innovative response strategies that will live up to the magnitude of the emerging opportunities. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the study which will be presented today identifies sectors with great potential that can be developed into champions such as pharmaceutical, textiles and apparel, and jewelry, food processing, higher education services, and ICT services. Imports of these products into Africa are worth billions of dollars. With the right strategy, we could boost up our production capacity to capture a share of the market. Today's workshop will discuss and validate a set of recommendations that, when implemented, will enhance our preparedness to avail of the opportunities under the agreement. We are doing this in an inclusive process involving stakeholders, both from the public and private sectors. It is not just about having a strategy. More importantly, we should have an action plan with a clear implementation roadmap and deliverables for the short, medium, and long term also. There should not be room for implementation deficit in the implementation of these of the agreement. The successful implementation of such an action-oriented strategy will be a game changer for our country, and which has been highlighted by the previous speakers, and a legacy for the next generation. With these remarks, I declare this workshop open and wish you a fruitful deliberations. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, FFA. You indicated that the CFTA is one of the flagships of the African Union. And to complement this landmark achievement of the African Union, the CFTA, we have also other flagship, for example, where we need to implement for the CFTA to be effective. Other flagships such as SATM, the Single African Transport, the movement of natural persons, and also the Single African Passport. So those flagships of the African Union would complement the CFTA for that regional bloc, the biggest regional bloc in the world, to be effective for member states, mainly to promote intra-trade and industrialization of the continent. But the full implementation of the CFTA there is a lot of challenges that we will have to face, especially given that Africa, we have a big problem of connectivity. To send our goods, especially to the northern and western part of Africa. Mauritius, we don't have preferential agreement with that part of Africa, but with the CFTA, I think it's going to be a game changer for us, and to further access that part of Africa on a preferential term. So we now come to the end of the opening session. So I would like to thank the guests for taking the time of their busy schedules to give their valuable insight on this workshop, the CFTA National Response Strategy.
Alors aujourd'hui, nous sommes là pour travailler ensemble sur une stratégie pour implémenter le Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. D'abord, c'est qu'on peut créer une zone de libre-échange à travers l'Afrique et 54 pays. Pour l'instant, il y a une quarantaine de pays qui ont signé, mais à terme, tout le monde pays l'Afrique. Maurice, il déjà peut exporter en Afrique, mais il exporte peut-être pas assez. Et l'idée, c'est qu'avec un tel arrangement, il est capable d'y avoir un accès préférentiel à sa marché. Aujourd'hui, ce que nous pouvons discuter, c'est comment nous sommes capables de faire une intégration, ça veut dire une chaîne de valeur qui est créée dans différents pays et Maurice a fait partie à différents niveaux dans sa chaîne de valeur. Mais pour nous, comme Business Mauritius, nous avons aussi qui est le point le plus important de ce rapport-là, c'est au niveau des services. Maurice est capable vraiment d'être un powerhouse sur un service par rapport à l'Afrique. Nous avons des services financiers, nous avons des services comptabilité, nous avons une panoplie de services que Maurice excellait et nous sommes capables d'ouvrir davantage ce marché-là et faire vivre un projet win-win. Parce que plutôt qu'il prend ce service-là d'ailleurs, nous pouvons prendre dans l'Afrique pour l'Afrique. Donc aujourd'hui, particulièrement parce que l'Afrique, bien sûr, nous, comme Maurice, nous devons mettre ça dans un axe plus grand, parce que bien sûr, nous avons aussi un accord traditionnel avec l'Europe, qui aujourd'hui nous paye plus en profondeur, nous paye élargir, et nous avons un accord préférentiel avec un nouveau marché, un marché émergent. Bien sûr, l'Inde étant un principal marché, et la Chine étant un autre, et tellement d'autres. Et là que nous plaçons, Maurice, à la confluence de tout cela, nous vraiment avons un rôle très très fort de développer un service et un produit vers l'Afrique, qui est le continent vraiment émergent du futur.
Merci beaucoup. Bon, on connaît aujourd'hui l'ECA avec l'assistance de l'ECA et l'Union européenne. Nous avons fait un workshop aujourd'hui pour déterminer comment nous sommes capables d'implémenter une décision qui prend cette agreement-là. Mais comment on dit, par exemple, implementation, nous n'avons besoin d'aucun implementation déficit. Nous avons le gros travail, c'est implémenter pour qu'ils soient capables de bénéficier au maximum de bénéfices dans les agreements. Moi, je connais, il peut représenter un marché de presque 1,3 milliard. Donc, avant, là pour le moment, nous avons SADEC, nous avons commerçant, on peut dire, nous avons structuré l'agreement avec ça, nous avons créé avec cette organisation-là, mais là, il est ouvert avec 54 pays de l'Union africaine. Donc, il y a un marché énorme. Il y a plusieurs secteurs qui sont identifiés et qui vont discuter aujourd'hui de stratégie même. Par exemple, secteur innovatif, secteur dans ICT, dans l'éducation, intellectual property rights, tous ces secteurs que nous sommes capables de rentrer, nous sommes capables de faire trade et montrer, pas seulement pour montrer, mais aussi développement économique, création d'emplois. Donc tout ça, c'est une stratégie qu'il faut discuter et qu'il faut valider et qu'il faut adopter aujourd'hui dans sa réunion dans le workshop. Et donc, nous pouvons faire tout le maximum pour que Maurice bénéficie avec ça, parce qu'il y a un grand potentiel énorme si nous pouvons take advantage de ça. Merci beaucoup. Donc, on a plusieurs choses qui nous ont regardé. Par exemple, on a Africa Fund, on a Africa Strategy, Mauritius Africa Fund, ça aussi est là. Donc, tout ça, nous avons regardé avec connectivité qui est important et développement infrastructure qui nous a mis sur place et stockage qui nous a avec tout ça là. Par exemple, ce qui peut faire avec Tanzanie. Donc, le stockage, l'infrastructure, la capacité building qui vous besoin de tout ce secteur là pour qui, avec l'assistance et avec en collaboration avec le secteur privé, nous sommes capables de bénéficier avec tout le bénéfice qui nous avec un
Oh, okay. It's actually going to help the private sector a lot. As we indicated, it's going to open a market, an African market of $1.3 billion, people, with a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. And if you look at Mauritius' trading partners, very carefully, you know that it's mostly with the EU, but 23% only with Africa. and not mainly with South Africa, and to a certain extent Seychelles, Kenya, and Madagascar. So this will open up the whole African market to Mauritian industry, to manufacturers, and also provide that avenue to source materials within the continent, and also a market, that very big market that we spoke about. So definitely is an opportunity that Mauritian businesses can leverage to really ensure that the manufacturing sector is revamped. We had a workshop yesterday on the manufacturing sector in Mauritius, together with the Ministry of Industry, SMEs, and cooperatives, and that was an issue that came up in terms of leveraging regional value chains that could be linked to global value chains. So it's really a very important opportunity for Mauritius, that it's actually the moment for Mauritius, and which should not pass the country. And it is actually the private sector. The AfCFTA is here for the private sector. They're the main operators. Governments just play an enabling role. They provide the enabling environment within which private sector can operate. So the agreement is for the private sector, but we've seen also the interest of the private sector. We also note that in the country, there's a lot of dialogue between private and public sector. And together, they will understand, like government will understand the needs of the private sector, if there are any challenges, and together work that out through a common platform that seeks to provide solutions to these challenges. But it is there, it's in the operationalization. That's why the adoption or the preparation of a Mauritius response strategy for AfCFTA and its implementation is really very important.